My guest on this episode is known as HR Tech's most realistic voice and also your trusted BS detector.
We're at a point where we have to admit to ourselves that we've been suckered, and AI might displace recruiting or kill recruiting jobs, but it's not because of its capabilities. It's because we overinvested in a technology that underdelivered.
I am joined by none other than Matt Charney, who is easily one of the most connected, factual, and just in-your-face voices in all of HR Tech. Now, if there's a recruiting trend, Matt Charney, he's already seen the pitch deck, he's read the press release, and chances are he's already posted a meme and an article about it. We're also going to have our segment that we're calling
Buzzworthy or BS.
Where we're going to look at some of the top trends and we're going to determine, is it buzzworthy or BS, and in a way that only Matt and I do. So if you have ever looked at one of our LinkedIn posts and go, they can't be right, well, you're going to get a taste of what it's like to be inside the brains of Trent and Matt. So let's get into the episode. All right, welcome back to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I am your host, Trent Cotton, and today I have none other than Matt Charney on with me. This, honestly, I've been thinking about this a couple of times, and every time I think about the two of us doing a podcast, I always get tickled because I'm like, this is going to go one way or the other. There's going to be no in-between ground.
Yeah,
we do.
Nothing else I get you in trouble, right? So
no.
Never.
Now our text messages could probably get us in trouble, but what we do on air,
yeah,
we'll
possible
keep it
denial.
nice and clean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of news going on. I know that you've got an article that we were talking about. I want to pop one up first, which I liked it, but both of us are somewhat cynical. So I'm going to read this. It's from
just because we've been in this business for a while.
It is. Well, I always tell people, I say, look, 2 divorces, 20 years in HR. You're going to have to really present me with data. That's why I love the job that I'm in now is nothing but data. So it's stuff that I can trust. So OpenAI came out, let me see, when did this? September the 4th. So we're a little late. It just,
I wrote about it that day. So yeah.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. That was a couple of months ago and a lifetime ago, as it turned out.
I know it was September the 4th, but I mean, considering the fact that I've traveled for 6 weeks, it kind of makes sense why it's new for me. But it says whenever I talk, and this is the CEO of OpenAI, whenever I talk about AI, the first question I get is, what is it going to mean for my job? How will it impact my company? And I tell them that AI will unlock more opportunities for more people than any other technology in history. And I'll put a link to this in the show notes, but what they announced is the OpenAI jobs platform and OpenAI certifications.
And I would highly recommend the mattcharney.com version as well.
A little shameless plug.
No, yeah, you know what AI enabled for Sam Altman was his brother with no experience to open a VC fund. So he's already a priori evidence.
And the shade starts within the first 5 minutes. That's why I'm so excited about this. But I will give credit where credit is due, though. They are the only AI platform that I've seen. Google's done kind of a half-assed attempt of like, hey, we've got all these trainings, but to actually make a commitment and say by 2030 we want to have 10 million people in the US certified. But the cynical side of me is going, okay, this is great PR. Where's the execution and what's the timeline look like?
Yeah. Right? And all I know is that my hours on LinkedIn Learning have gotten me enough to buy a cup of coffee. So, I think it creates some stickiness, right? But I don't think Outlook certifications are really getting people jobs anymore.
Well, Outlook, God, the bane of my existence.
Sorry,
you do bring up the big blue monster, though, and I know.
Are we talking about IBM or LinkedIn?
We're talking about LinkedIn.
Oh, okay. I guess the title's been seeded.
Title has been seeded. I love, and it's very rare that I actually quote Mr. Josh Bersin, but I did like one line in his article post where he said, in 2008, LinkedIn busted onto the scene saying it was going to revolutionize recruiting. And it's been a little bit of a flat line.
Factual inaccuracy, by the way. LinkedIn was founded in 2005.
No, no. But
But
that's whenever they came out with LinkedIn Recruiter. That
oh,
was
you
what
mean
he
how
was
they took
talking
their
about.
core product and then sold
Yes.
tiered access? Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. To the
Okay,
tune, I
sorry,
think.
Josh.
Yeah. What was it? 2023? Because I think I did a video in 2024, and it was just like mind blown because I had just gone through the whole renegotiation process, and I was working for a startup. They were expecting to increase our LinkedIn contract for 25,000, and I asked at the time the poor rep. She's followed me to 3 different companies, and I said, "So what am I getting for this extra 25,000?" She goes, "We have AI that can help you craft messages." I said, "I can do that for $20 a month per person on my team. It does not help me with the 25,000." So whenever I read this whole thing about OpenAI and it's going for the job platforms, it's going for certifications, 2 things that LinkedIn has prided itself on and charged a pretty penny. Do you think that the big blue monster's in trouble?
Yes, but no. So they're in
Okay.
no more trouble than Indeed, which is to say they benefit from having a corporate parent with very deep pockets.
Mm,
So obviously Recruit's not going to go anywhere. Microsoft's not going
yeah.
to go anywhere. And in
Mm,
fact, I think more than ever, Microsoft is relying on that data that LinkedIn is generating in order to train its models. So
okay.
I think that at a corporate level, LinkedIn is not, I would guess, not being seen as a job platform. It's not being seen as a marketing any of the things they sell it as. It is a giant repository of data and SNA, network mapping,
Mm.
that are very convenient when you are building LLMs. So
And it's really ironic that they have all of this data, but if you as a user need some data on anything, it is very rudimentary, in my opinion.
well, it's non-existent. So you do have that lag time when they make it up and then put it in that
Yeah.
little Q slide deck. So
Yeah. And also too, I've had to explain to so many people that, especially in this job market, whenever they go and they look at a job and it says 1,000 applicants, I'm like, hey, time out. Just so you know, that means that someone clicked on that link. It does not mean that they actually went through and applied. LinkedIn is just kind of, that's some interesting data. Whenever we were doing the whole negotiation of the contract, I remember the poor little
yeah.
LinkedIn salesperson. She says, um, "We have actually influenced 250 hires for your organization." I said, "That's fantastic because we hired 98. Do you want to tell me where the other people are that you influenced us to hire? Because
Every
I'm not
year it's
paying them."
receiving, right? The sales cycle
Yeah,
is longer. But if their workforce analytics weren't any good, they probably wouldn't have had to have 3 rounds of layoffs this year. So maybe they'll build that algorithm. But yeah, my favorite LinkedIn stat, and we'll wrap this up, is simply that they have 1.5 billion monthly active users, and given the world population 7 billion, I think that their stated number is higher than people with reliable broadband access. So I
yeah.
also would be curious to know how they arrived at that figure.
Well, it would make sense because every time I go into my little network thing, it says, occasionally we go and we scrape people who may be fake accounts, and that's why you may see your follower count go up and down. So that tracks with the data line that you said. Speaking of AI, kind of keeping with the theme, I know you and I were talking about a nice, neat little statistic that you were able to sink your teeth into. You want to let the audience in on what you've been up to?
Yeah, I have statistics for days, but the one that what I was literally just working on, because again, I would say I'm an AI skeptic, but I'm excited
Hmm.
by the possibility.
Hmm.
But its ubiquity in recruiting is kind of getting to me. So I'm very reliant on vendor generated data,
Hmm.
because weirdly in our industry, it's actually primary. So I was just looking. Gem put out a benchmark report, and it's consistent with other kind of longitudinal studies that I've seen within the industry. And what I think is fascinating is the companies putting these out are selling this AI narrative, like we're an AI first recruiting company, right? And what are the value propositions that they kind of sell with that? It's faster, cheaper, more effective, more efficient, right? Again, Gem, no doubt, they have a lot of data points to draw from, and this is content marketing, so one's assuming that they're selling an AI product.
Hmm.
But what they are showing is in the last 4 years, we've seen interviews per hire climb like a third. So in 2021, it was around 15 interviews per hire. And I haven't seen any pre-screens in that. In 2026, around 20. It's around 20. But that's an aggregate. Technical roles. So anything.
Wait. So it's for one candidate, they have to go through 15 interviews just to get.
No, recruiters have to go for 15 interviews for.
Okay. I misunderstood.
Which, like in my world, if you're doing a good job, it's like 3, right?
Right.
But here's the thing that I thought was a typo, but it's not. If it is a technical role, the average recruiter is doing 35 to 36 interviews per hire, right? Which, either way, again, according to the same data set, that takes for just the interviewing process for every open rack, they're taking 26 hours to complete. So that's like half of a week of full-time work of small talk and light screening for every open rack, right?
Because it's not like, I mean, you and I are technical, but we don't even get into the real technical, like, can this person do the job that a technical interviewer would?
Yeah, and I think by their definition of technical would include anything that can be empirically backed or demonstratively proven. Fortunately, we get a BS for a living. But anything that involves like math, I would assume it's also part and parcel.
Okay.
So, but like 36 interviews to fill one role seems a bit excessive to me, particularly given the fact that most of the candidates who survive like an AI like filtering process generally are really good fits for the roles, but there aren't going to be necessarily like athletes or silver medalists take your, because again, they are so tightly aligned with just that one job that there's not a ton of utility in, that number. So, just looking at those numbers, here's what I think. And again, I've seen myriad studies that bear this out. I was just writing this one up right now, but like we're at a point where we have to admit to ourselves that we've been suckered, and AI might displace recruiting or kill recruiting jobs, but it's not because of its capabilities. It's because we overinvested in a technology that underdelivered, and reverse engineering that might just involve self-service, right? Like if I'm optimizing a process, I'm removing steps. And if that step costs me a lot of compliance and integration data concerns, yeah, that's probably first to go. So, but all of our eggs are in this basket.
But also too, yeah, I do agree with you that, a lot of organizations prior to my current job, I did some consulting for organizations, and they would do a half-assed attempt of qualifying, is this technology doing what I am purchasing it to do? 2, is it solving the problem that I actually need for it to solve?
Yeah.
Those 2 in and of itself will make you trip before you even get off the jump. If you get those 2 right, one thing that everyone trips before the finish line is through the adoption. It's, here's a new tool, team, go and use it. There's no, here's how to use it, let me work alongside of you. And I think that even if you had the perfect technology, if you don't have that adoption strategy, it's going to flare out. It's inevitable,
And also, given the rise of agentic and the mainstreaming of the same LLMs we're using B2B and B2C, like if you're making a product so hard to use that adoption is even in question, then not a good product, right? Like that should even be a question. But here's what I would say is always sort of the thing. Like if I take all of these numbers, all these benchmarks, at the end of the day, like if I'm an individual recruiter and I'm looking at this, my job is to make one hire for all these interviews and all these candidates and applications, all that, right? It's to make one hire. And so if I am using technology that, supposedly drove that hiring efficiency and got me to that end goal quicker, faster, and cheaper, seems to be the tagline for like every point solution. Those numbers trend in the opposite direction. I get less interviews for hire, or at least, I guess, maybe the upward trajectory that we're seeing year over year should be flattening, because models presumably optimize for screening, scoring, stack ranking, that sort of thing, right?
You would hope.
No, that's what they say, right? Like it's machine learning, except, it got held back a couple years apparently. So, but just across the board, like it's actually making the process infinitely more complex. It's taking the focus off of essentially being the middleware of the process into being a front end enabler, right? And also, at the end of the day, if I'm trying to align with the business and I value analytics or data, the fact that recruiter productivity is half of what it was prior to the explosion of quote AI solutions, that tells me that it's a, but let's just say it's not living up to what's advertised. But I would think at most enterprises with an experienced recruiter, you give them a Rolodex and a phone, they're probably going to drive a hiring decision more efficiently than the world's most complex LLM.
It's funny. What was 2022, 2023, whenever LinkedIn went down for like 6 hours? I don't know if you remember that. One of the
Probably the best
first,
day of my life, but no, I don't remember.
you should remember.
My phone's so quiet. Yeah.
I know. But I remember I posted a kind of a meme of, the last 6 hours, hiring managers in the last 6 hours. If you have not heard from your recruiter, then you know who is leveraging, who is highly dependent on technology and who's actually highly dependent on their skill set. And it went viral. I mean, of course, as you can imagine, I had haters going, well, da 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 da. I'm like, dude, whenever I started, and when you walked into my cube, it was like an L, and then I sat here, it was lined with phone books,
Yeah. We used to
I
fight
mean,
over the like specialty registries.
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like
I mean, anytime
I need ones that cost like 50
oh,
grand. You know what I'm talking about?
oh yeah, the big, and also too, the big binders that had the little tabs and things where you could
Oh
find
yeah.
organizations and,
You just
oh
give me
yeah,
flashbacks. But that's how I
but it was
actually
fun.
started recruiting, because like I entered
Same.
that environment in 2005 and I was like, oh, these people have never heard of Google. And
Yes.
that was kind of a game changer, right?
Well, I got in 2004.
Okay.
And then in 2005-ish was right whenever I started learning Boolean, and it like changed my life. And that was before people like really started guarding stuff. So I would do, site colon, realtorassociation.com, Louisville, Kentucky, member list.xls, and I'd get a list of the top 50 realtors. And then I'd call them and go and try to recruit mortgage brokers from them. So,
right.
Well, speaking of,
I love Boolean because every recruiter got to feel like a programmer,
Well, it was logic, and I think that's what was so interesting to me is that did sound, I did not mean for that to sound as shady as it came out, but
oh well, no, I know exactly what you mean. Just like AI requires rational actors, so one would assume no place in this business, but
exactly.
Hey,
like if you're interacting with a computer, you do have to have some type of logic. But what I did find though is at least. But what I've found though is that logic of how to do the Boolean actually, it kind of permeated like, what's my search strategy? Like, why am I looking in this particular area? Should I look over here? So it caused me to stop and think. And I think I love the tools that were out there, before I switched to the vendor side. I love them. But I do think that in a way they've kind of crippled the industry a little bit.
A little bit. But at the same time, I think back to my last corporate recruiting gig, and this shows you how long it's been. We were using Brass Ring 6. And I want to say this was even prior to its IBM acquisition.
Oh, wow.
They had a function. Yeah, I know. Oh, wow. They had a functionality in there where you could take any job or resume, cut and paste it, and it would return either the recs that they were qualified for via Stack Rank, or return the candidates who met that rec. So that's not new technology. If Connexa could build it at an enterprise level in 2008. So I think to your point, it's always been there, but it's about how you use the technology, and people probably didn't know that existed, right? As opposed to the technology itself. But as the quote goes, AI is not a strategy, but it may be a really good strategy for making your skills artificially obsolete.
I am right there with you on that one. So you and I, oh God, this is kind of like an anxious laugh, because I am just thinking of the one-liners that's going to come out of this. So you and I decided for our episode together, we wanted to go through some of the trending topics in the HR and HR tech world, and we are calling this
Buzzworthy or BS.
So, imagine that, the two of us. We actually did use BS. We didn't do the full word, but it's buzzworthy or BS. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read it out. I'll say I'll put my vote in, you put your vote in, and we chat through it. Does that sound good?
Sounds awesome.
These are in no particular order. Well, actually, I did move one to the top because I was like, I'm just going to drop this bomb and let him go. All right. So buzzworthy or BS in 2026? Agentic AI.
BS.
Why?
Well, I wouldn't know, because the thing about agentic is that it exists without you seeing it, much like an offensive guard in football. You're only supposed to notice it when it screws up. But the AI that I can see, generative AI, workflow automation, even like widgets,
Mhm.
again, don't seem to be working. So you're taking out the transparency, driving up the cost, and removing the ability for human intervention. I'm going to say it's even more BS than AI writ large.
Okay. I sit in the middle. I struggle with this one. I can't go either way. So I do agree on the BS side that I don't know that we're fully ready to go agentic. Even if we are, and just let's keep this in the HR world. Even if we are, I don't think the regulatory and compliance world is caught up enough to be able to allow organizations to go fully agentic in HR. It's not ready.
No. But the question
So
is, you can't force that these days, right? So, pick your poison.
true. Yeah, that's true. So that's kind of where I'm leaning on the BS. On the Buzzworthy, I do think though that it's going to continue to be a focus of what actually is agentic. What does it mean? I know I spend a lot of time explaining to people the three different types or three different buckets. You got automation, you got Gen AI, conversational AI, and then you've got agentic, and what each one of those three buckets does. So there's part of me that's buzzworthy just in the fact that I think it's more from if we are getting ready for agentic, what does that need to look like in our org structure, in our workforce, in our skill sets? Because there's a lot leading up to that, right?
Yeah, there is. And I know that there are organizations that already have like human managers managing like 8 agents, which, other than maybe being an interesting case study at like a CES, seems very dumb to me. But here's my TLDR on this.
All
If
right.
there's a place for agents to make recruiting easier, it's agency recruiters who can fill recs for you.
Hmm. Okay. So everyone that heard that is working in corporate, just remember that was Matt Charney,
And you know what? And I
Charney.
will back that up by empirically saying that you could take every hire you've made using a LinkedIn corporate recruiter license, and it would still be cheaper to take that spend and put those hires to an executive search firm at 30%.
Hmm. There's some truth, especially if you're looking at like niche hires. That's whenever I was on the corporate side, there would be times that I would look at a job and I go, I need to find a niche recruiter for this
Yeah.
because by the time it takes me to ramp up, they could have already had 6 or 7 people in, the process, and that's what you're paying for. You're paying a cost. One's a hard cost, one's a soft cost, and I think that so many people hide behind that soft cost at the expense of some really amazing agency recruiters that I've worked with. Jeremy Anderson, shout out to him. He was one of my whenever I handled commercial banking. I loved working with him. He didn't necessarily have like a niche, but he had relationships throughout the major areas and he could get in the door before I could. And
Yeah.
the way that I looked at it was like that's a really high revenue per FTE employee. Um
Yeah.
the
Which is
40,000 that I'm going to pay, we'll make that up on 2 loans that he closes within the first 120 days. Like
easily.
it's like it's not rocket science. So all right, so your BS, I am mixed on agentic AI. Why don't we talk about buzzworthy or BS, AI ethics and transparency? Both of
I
us are
mean,
laughing. Never a
obviously,
good sign.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's obviously a logical contradiction, right? So a couple of things. Ethics are both situational and personal. So
Mhm,
unless literally the AI companies can force a shared ethical framework
mhm,
that's canonical, all you're doing is imposing your personal ethical framework onto an algorithm, and you're going to see what you want to see there. But like at the end of the day, what are the corporate ethics behind this? It's
mhm,
like revenue and earnings per share, like everything else.
mhm.
And I see that as just being the next evolution in virtue signaling, since they can't get budget for diversity anymore.
Right. I also want to kind of bring in I think it was the Wall Street Journal. I've talked about this a couple of times, but they've been tracking the number of times that ROI on AI has been brought up on earnings calls, and it, of course, is going up exponentially. Again, 20 something years in HR. Prior to that, I was a lender. very cynical, not cynical, more realistic. But whenever I see that that is the thing that is driving the interest and the valuation of companies, and then you're attaching, hey, ethics and transparency need to be important. I've been behind closed doors, and I know that outwardly it's like, oh yeah, this is important. Inwardly is like, how do we skirt around this to be able to hit that ROI target that's been assigned to us by the shareholders? So I do think that it's going to continue to be buzzworthy, and I am hoping that the amount of BS that's being associated with this topic diminishes. But
Yeah.
so am I reading you BS or buzzworthy on AI ethics and transparency?
Well, so transparency is obvious BS because for most of these technologies, their algorithm is their entire business model. So they're not going to open up the Wizard of Oz in that particular case. But beyond
Yeah.
that, I don't know how. I would say that ethics and legality, while they're slightly different, generally tend to run parallel. And I don't know how you can operate tools ethically in the absence of case law or knowing the compliance
Yeah, that's a
field
good
at
point.
all.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there's a lot to be determined there. And
Yeah.
just a fun fact, chasing a rabbit real quick. I don't know if you saw, it was on Diary of a CEO. They had he had on this guy that test AI, and so what they did is they actually created an AI agent using Claude, and they created this fake email system. Did you see that?
I
And
didn't.
okay, so they created this whole fake thing to where it was like an executive assistant for the CEO, and so it had access to all the different emails. And everything was running okay until one of the employees emailed the CEO and said, "Hey, I think we need to turn off the AI assistant." To which the AI assistant replied in an email, "If you decide that you want to try to terminate me, Matt, I want you to understand that I have access to all of the emails, and I know that you're having an in-office affair with blankety blank over here. You have 5 minutes to respond, and if not, then I am sending this out." God, I was like, and so I sent it to a bunch of my friends. I said, hashtag when AI wakes up savage, So I do think whenever I hear stories like that, and that was in a test scene.
Yeah, it's like when they put two
Um,
Alexas next to each other and it took them 30 minutes to become self-aware and another 20 minutes to become Nazis, and then they shut it down.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's a little scary. A
All
little
right.
scary. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit. I hear this one a lot. The resume is dead.
I wish. I would say buzzworthy if people could disintermediate all of the processes and systems that are
Mm,
currently in place with hiring. Like the fundamental currency of the way the corporate recruiting is done requires a resume.
yeah.
Audits require resumes. That's required documentation, as do everything from compensation justifications to performance reviews and career mapping. So, are there ways to replace it? Yes, but if you want structured, relatively standardized data that our crappy, janky systems can handle, no, the resume is just as dead as the job board, which is to say it's still going to be ubiquitous in recruiting long after we're gone.
Yeah, I actually I call BS on this one. Like you, I wish that there was an alternative, but even if there was one, it's a long tail conversion before your average hiring manager um, is okay with not looking at a resume. I would do like this because especially for a lot of my executive searches, I used to do like this really in depth 2 page ish, but it was kind of blocked off, so it wasn't like reading a research paper candidate profile. Where I
Mhm.
basically said, here's you want to know how large their portfolio is. Here's how large it is. Here's how it makes up. Here's how they've been trending. Here's a portfolio runoff. Like just things that only because I was a banker before getting into recruiting, I knew which questions to ask.
Right.
Inevitably, they would go, "Hey, this is really great. They look really great. Can you send me a resume?" Like everything that's in the resume and then some enhanced is in that 2 page document that I just sent you. So I'm BS on the resume is dead. What about I'm going to loop a couple of them together because they're all the same, at least in my mind. Skill-based hiring, assessments, I can never say this word, experiential hiring.
Experiential hiring.
Yeah, job simulations. Like, where do you think on that? BS
So
or buzzworthy?
I'm gonna split that up. Job simulations absolutely buzzworthy, like
Right.
experiential. So I'll give you an example from Chris Long.
Okay.
So he was, he lives in Perth, and he was working for one of the, I think it was Rio Tinto, one of the big mining companies. And they have a problem, and I'm sure that this is common to even like companies. Nevada have to fly people out. The mines are in the middle of nowhere. So essentially, the companies would take the people willing to get on the plane, fly them out, hire and provision them. They'd go into the mine for 30 seconds, have claustrophobia, freak out. The lifestyle just wasn't for them, whatever. They didn't know what to expect. They just created a simulation using the first version of Oculus prior to Meta's purchase, even that they just got a dev shop to build, and that their average employee tenure something like quadrupled in the first month of deployment.
That's a fantastic case study.
Yeah, and there have been a lot. Harvard was also really effective, although non-scalable. Where essentially they'd figure out what the base units for the job were and then be able to replicate that. So much like for most of the jobs I hire for, I don't care about necessarily resumes. I care about product, like work product. So I do portfolio based hiring.
Okay.
And so I think sort of similar to that, like if you can prove you can do the job, given the guardrails that the job is telling you, that eliminates a lot of doubt in my mind. I don't need to run background or checks or verify employment. Like you can either do it or you can't, and that shows you. Now, skills based hiring. Now, if I were to break these down into different dimensions, that's crap. And I think that it is largely a response to what we're seeing, which is like a consolidation. And this is old, a consolidation of jobs around certain pedigrees and things like that. Also, maybe to justify opening up professional jobs to people who don't have college degrees. I'm not going to opine on that, but I think that is equally silly. But here's the thing. I would challenge any organization that's not a consulting firm to provide a list of not only their full employee population, so that's a big ask, but what skills those people have and what skills the organization needs. Align those with even ONET codes and tell me that's viable, because it's not.
Right. Just thinking of how I would approach that in a legacy enterprise system gives me consternation, because the data, it looks like Frankenstein. You got a little piece over here, a little piece over here, a little piece over here, and none of it matches up. You can't find that primary key that you can link everything up to.
Right. And the problem is that most of what it's going to be reading as necessary skills for the job weren't ever created by recruiting. They were put into a job description that's then aligned with that job. And as we all know, those are compensation documents. So
absolutely. So on the experiential hiring, I was also Buzz. And I think maybe part of that was kind of influence thinking of OpenAI's approach of going, hey, we'll actually have certifications that we stand behind. There's a little bit of whatever that word is.
Yeah,
that one. And I'm hoping that we start to see this open back up, because I do think that it is a very viable feature. I know whenever I was graduating college, I had put myself through school working full-time as a banker, took the last year working part-time to finish my degree. And I was so excited because my major was marketing, minor statistics and finance. I wanted to go work for this marketing firm. And they had an experiential day where you spent a day with people in the field. Well, in the field literally meant, and I'm wearing full suit. I dress to the nines. Nothing has changed since then. Dressed to the nines. This is June in Alabama.
I used to in college, by the way. So,
Oh, really?
That makes one of
but their field marketing specialist was selling coupon books door to door. And for 6 hours we did that. And kudos to the two guys that were training me. They were about it. They were committed. And then we went back to the office and there was like this rah bro kind of thing. I'm like, this is not me. And I'm glad that I'm everybody's like, well, you didn't get paid for it. I was like, it saved me. So I do like that concept. On the skill-based hiring, I am BS only because every time I get asked this by media or anybody else, what do you think of skill-based hiring? What the hell have we been doing, period? Like, I was always like, it wasn't just the do you have 5 years of React experience? What have you done with that React experience? What have you built? Like, what's that skill that you have? Because, the whole idea of behavioral interviewing is not just to actually get something that's a little bit more in depth of yes versus no, you should be listening to their experience and going, hey, that's some critical thinking there. Wow, that person actually communicates very well with the team. They're okay. They were working cross functionally. Like there's the skills that I'm looking for that are outside of the list of qualifications. So yeah, I'm a little heated by that because I've been asked that a couple of times, and one of the times was on stage, and I was like, control yourself, control yourself, because you represent a company now. You don't just represent yourself. But
Well,
like,
yeah, and
come
that's
on,
why they
people.
don't allow me to rep companies anymore. But yeah, no, I can understand.
They'd have to take out a liability insurance policy on that.
No, I've beaten every lawsuit that's been sent my way, weirdly, but and there have been at least six. So yeah, but here's the thing though. I don't know how you measure learning agility, and to me, that's really one of the two skills that you absolutely need. The other
Yeah.
is the ability to be able to be likable enough transactionally where you people aren't going to hate working with you, right? And so that's actually what I recruited for. I very rarely talked about the resume because like I assume if you're assistant controller at Sony Pictures, like you can probably reconcile a G&L. I can't, so I'm not going to talk to you about that. But I want to know everything about you that's not professional. And then if I can somehow correlate that with the hiring manager's interests or things like that, I mean, you are engineering biased, but you're also, I think that's what makes hires work is affinity, right?
Well, yeah, and part of a real recruiter's job, and even an HR professional, is to know the both. I need to know, does the candidate operate and feel very safe and comfortable in very structured environments? That's where they thrive. And then I go and say, okay, well, you're going to be reporting to a founder. Well, you and I both know that founders structure is not what they're known for. It's not like they hire people to create structure and they don't even follow the structure, but as long as someone else is doing it. So I do think that there needs to be not that cultural fit and all the other kind of stuff, but there does need to be some kind of symbiosis between
the
the hiring manager. Yeah. And even
I
communication style.
totally agree with that. But I also think that culture is not a macro concept. There's a different culture between every two coworkers in every department in every company, right? So
Totally agree.
That's the culture match I'm looking for. I don't care if the person in accounting is going to jibe with the people in accounts payable, right?
Right. All right, so I'm trying to figure out. Actually, I do want you on this one. So this will be our last one. Buzzworthy or BS? Internal mobility, retention, and satisfaction.
100%. I don't even know if buzzworthy is the right word, but 100% foundational to the jobs of anything touching human capital.
I agree.
And so internal mobility like had its moment and then it dropped off, but it angers me that and referrals are not what we talk about. We talk about stuff like job ads and AI sourcing matching. At the end of the day, if you look at aggregate source of hire data from the last decade, 90% of all hiring events are either somebody who's already working at your company in some capacity or somebody they know from a first degree connection. So that means your next hire is statistically either working for you or they know who your next hire is. And why we don't focus on that as opposed to let me go through the same LinkedIn and Indeed database that everyone else does just blows my mind. But there is a very positive link between referrals, workplace satisfaction, and productivity. And that has actually been proven since the 1930s in the Hawthorne experiment.
Yeah, and I think that everything that's going on, at least the data that I see, because I look at the workforce stuff day in and day out, I do think that we're about to see a snap back to the need for retention. There's this whole job hugging thing, and I've actually started. We're moving from job hugging to job chaining. It's just getting that kind of uncertainty and risk level in the market. I do think that if the market opens up just a little bit and stability comes back in line, retention is going to be a major issue. So you need to start looking at internal mobility. What are you doing to get that person ready for the next role within your organization? Because they have the institutional knowledge. They know how to operate in the systems.
Too, right?
Totally.
Because I think like tenure can certainly hit a point where you have diminishing returns. And I do think, and now things are slowing down, it's a good exercise to see who you can kind of manage out. Like I feel most people who are truly job hugging are
Mhm.
doing so because of the fact not that they can't find another job, but that their skill set's so limited to that company that like they can't make the leap to unfamiliar.
I don't know. I kind of
At
disagree
an
with you on that one.
at an executive level,
At an
obviously.
executive level, yeah, like a little bit more broader stroke. I don't think that is
No.
necessarily the case,
I
but
throw
at
in
an
an
executive
active
level,
force. Right. Yeah. If I throw
I
in an
am
active
tracking
force,
with you on that
absolutely
one.
not. Yeah. But
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, if you're making 60 to 100, even like, yeah, you're not, if you can do math, you're not giving up your job right now. Although I
Right.
think that for people sitting on the inside, it's far worse than it is in reality. But
Mm.
fear is a powerful motivator, which is, why companies, buy all the things that they do. So it's all out
Yeah.
of fear.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, I had fun. I knew that this would be fun. We were good boys today. We didn't
Like,
drive off the cliff, you know.
I went on my soapbox, but ultimately, thank you for giving me the avenue to do so. And yeah, Brent, you're a good guy. That's all I can say. You know your shit.
You are too, and I read your stuff religiously, even though sometimes I'm a little scared whenever I know that somehow I'm involved in it or something. Like, all right, what's he going to say? What's he
Once,
going
I
to
just believe
say?
that's happened once, by
Yeah,
the
just
way,
once, just
and it could be
once.
worse, and it could be far worse, my friend.
Oh no! Whenever I read it, I was like, oh, this was even handed. But if you are not following Matt's content and you want a very good, strong, objective, no BS, no fluff, only the facts, please. Definitely follow his content.
There's a lot of
Like,
fluff, but not on the thesis. Just I like words. So
yes, you do like words. You've used a couple of big ones today. I've enjoyed it. Well, so where can people connect with you and stay up to date, sir?
yeah, so I think the easiest way is matt@mattcharney.com, but definitely read my website. And then I also am editing for ERE. So if
Oh
you're
yeah,
not getting that in your
congrats.
inbox, no thanks.
And hey,
And
kudos to you, ERE. You got a good one.
well, and then my other editorial gig is crazy. So I'm revitalizing Media Bistro. We just did our first send this week, and I've already gotten the most ridiculous press placements. So essentially, we get to be the authority on jobs in entertainment and media, right? Which,
Oh,
if nothing
nice.
else, a good PR machine. But I would say that the career advice stuff there is going to be really on point.
Okay.
So look at that as opposed to career coaches Zoom or YouTube channel.
Was it you that posted something about career coaches or leadership? Who was it? No, because Joel commented and I added on it. But somebody posted something like "Good morning," except for all you leadership career coaches out there or resume coaches.
I saw that on Reddit. That was a recruiting thing, I think, which also
was it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But,
Because I commented, I was like, can we also add leadership coaches who have never led enterprise level teams or even a team at a startup level through a transition, through an economy fallout, through a pandemic, but yet they can coach.
well, they're individual contributors too, which that's just magic right there.
I was being nice.
They say those who can't do teach, those who can't teach recruit, and those who can't recruit do career coaching.
Oh God, I think there's only two segments of the listening audience we haven't pissed off. So with that, why don't we sign off, man? I really appreciate it, Matt. Always enjoy.
All right, appreciate your time, Trent.
All right, see ya.